What I love about Fremantle is that you can see the history on the streets. All the old buildings are preserved and you see something of the character of the city from sometime around the early 1900s. And what I want to talk about today is about an incident that happened in 1919. We've got Alex Rigby. He's going to tell us the story of the death of, he's a dock worker, his name is Tom Edwards. Well, you could say the death, some would say the murder. But this is something that is key to the industrial trade union history in Australia. Well, before we get into that, maybe think about what Fremantle was like in 1919. Perth today is one of the most remote cities on earth. Very far away. The nearest cities would be Adelaide, Darwin, Singapore, places like that. But it's very remote. And in 1919, it was also similarly remote. And I guess you've got to think the population today of Perth is several million. But in 1919, the population of Perth was just over 200,000. Perth is a city, it's the main city, and then Fremantle is the port. The Perth city sits on the Swan River, was originally settled as the Swan River Colony, and they became a penal settlement, but the port or the mouth of the Swan River is where Fremantle is. So anything that comes into Western Australia, even today, Fremantle is a very significant port, and this is where all of the goods coming into Western Australia. As you stand on the docks, you're going to see lots of car transporters, grain ships, and anything that comes in and out which is carried by the bulk carriers. It's going to be in Fremantle Port, so it's very busy and always has been. So think about Fremantle in 1919. Only 200,000 of a population. It's the end of World War. There's lots of returning troops, lots of labour and people needing work. And you've got the established trade union movement. And the trade union movement is critical for our story on the death of Tom Edwards and why this was an important date, or his death was important in the history of Fremantle and in the labour movement. So in 1919, returning troops, there was a food shortage. Hard to believe in a food basket like Western Australia, but that was the case. There was a food shortage. And also it was at the peak of the Spanish flu, so millions, an estimated 50 million people died worldwide, more than in the First World War itself, and the Spanish flu had come to Perth. Now our story, which Alex will pick up, is based around the ship, the SS Dimboola, and it was carrying much needed food and much needed medical supplies into the port at Fremantle. Now, they also knew that there was Spanish flu on board this ship. The ship should have been in quarantine, should have been prevented from being unloaded. But because there was much needed supplies, the government wanted to bring it through. And it brought in labour from one of the trade unions that was friendly to the government, not the Fremantle Lumpers Union, which was the main dock workers union, and it was opposed to the government and it was opposed to the bringing in of this ship, and that's what created the conflict. The government approved union. They considered it essentially to be scab or black leg labour at the time, but the government needs these supplies. They want to bring it in. The Premier at the time starts to bring the scab labour on boats to the ship to try and unload. And importantly, you have barricades that are set up by the union or by the government at the time to stop the union workers from coming in. So Alex picks up the story. He's going to tell us about the death of Tom Edwards and why it was significant to Fremantle.
So here in Fremantle, I'm going to talk a little bit about the SS Dimboola. Arrived here in 1919. Originally was an American vessel. Arrived due to the concerns around the Spanish flu. The union workers didn't want to let anyone get off the ship and actually come into the port. So rather than sending it up to quarantine, they actually used non-union workers to come and start unloading the ship. As a result, unions started to create barricades, and from here they started to create tension, create problems. So what you actually ended up happening was the police came in to reinforce it. So as the union workers then started to fight back against the police, there was only one fatality. this memorial fountain was set up for the one fatality, which was Tom Edwards, and this actually was as a result of being struck by a baton to the head, and unfortunately he was the only person that passed. So after the incident, Tom Edwards died 3 days later. As a result, there was a massive funeral where people lined the streets of Fremantle, and this monument was set up in his honour to what had happened during the riots. So after the one fatality, everyone actually took a pause for breath, and once everything had calmed down, they actually agreed that the riots would end.